everyone, to this webinar this afternoon. So glad you could join us. Always happy to see folks join in, especially on a late Tuesday afternoon. But we've got a lot to cover today and very little time to cover it. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. First off, who am I? My name is Matt Hicken. Been here at Bill Good, or associated with Bill Good Marketing, for over 24 years. Been a coach for 10 of those years, and then and a consultant, but also worked in the industry as an advisor, as a team manager, marketing director, and portfolio manager for a team in North Carolina, where we grew our business significantly, just using a lot of the principles that we're going to talk about today, plus a lot of the stuff that I teach in my Asset Accelerator course. So today, again, like I said, we've got a lot to cover. So really, to cover up front, I do want to make sure that I answer your questions. If you have anything that you really want to make sure that we discuss, please do pop those in there. You can put it into the Q&A section or into the chat. Either way, we'll be watching that, and we'll try to address as many of those questions as we possibly can. Other aspects, of course, this is going to be recorded, so hopefully you'll be able to access down the road. But that being said, the more important part is that you're here live. And since you are here live, you have the wonderful privilege of being able to access the goodie bag for this webinar. This goodie bag does contain a couple of very important pieces that'll be along the lines of what we discussed today. However, they go a little bit further than what we're going to talk about. We're primarily going to be talking about kind of the front end of the pipeline development. This is primarily going to be in the 16 steps of a master sales presentation. What happens once you get them in the door? So once you have somebody in front of you, a qualified prospect, how do you work that through? So it's the 16 steps of the master sales presentation. That will be available to you at the end. Along with, we have drawn up in a pretty detailed picture of exactly how your prospect pipeline should look. So it's the exact, we call it the BGM Prospect Conversion Process Flowchart, which is a long way of saying it's exactly how the map of how you're going to move prospects through from prospect all the way to client. So those are both going to be available to you, but just ask that you stay to the very end, answer a few quick questions, which actually will then help us to help you. And then you get access to these wonderful documents. It's kind of a win-win for you. So happy to answer questions, but do stay to the very, very end to make sure that you can access that goodie bag. So let's dive into some of the things that we're going to talk about today. Very first off, I want to talk about, stop sharing here just so that we can talk. There are kind of three things that we told you that we were going to cover in this webinar, and I really want to dive into them as fast as we can. The very first one is unlocking your ideal prospect. And this is one of those things that I feel like not enough advisors spend enough time on. The reality is that we've got a lot of options. And when you're first in the business as a financial advisor, all of those options sound amazing. And so we just kind of shoot to get anybody and everybody in the door. But the reality is there's a significant power, and there's several levels to that power when you pick a target client persona. So the powers come in that, first off, you're able to develop the systems and processes and services that best fit those clients. Second, the word of mouth is just not even something that I can fully describe very well because it just continues on. It builds on itself. As long as you've picked the exact right process, right, through the right ideal client group. So that there are massive benefits to picking your ideal client and sticking to it. And so the reality is, though, is how do you go about picking them? And this is where a lot of advisors struggle. Very first off, I'm going to have you go through a series of questions. And there's really just three main things. So very first off, who do you like working with? I had this one advisor that I was working with, that they were working through all their prospecting efforts, and they just said, hey, look, like, attorneys have money. I'm going to shoot for attorneys. Do you like working with attorneys? No, they're the worst. Not that I think that's what the advisor felt. So why are you going for it? Like, if you don't like working with them, and if it's strictly just because they have money and you've gained a little bit of understanding about how they have their investments set up, why are you targeting them? It makes no sense. There's not going to be any connection between you and them. All of the aspects of client retention and engagement that we preach at Bill Good Marketing that would help you to basically develop clients for life and up to multiple generations would be a pain, not a joy as it should be. So who do you mesh with? Who do you really like talking to? I had another advisor that I was talking to that, of course, said, "Oh, I'd love to work with the ultra high net worth." But when they were around the ultra high net worth, they were just massively uncomfortable. For some reason, they put it in their head that the ultra high net worth were very different people from them. And yeah, obviously they had different experiences, different backgrounds potentially. But the reality is they're people too. But that all that doesn't matter. It came down to the fact that the advisor felt uncomfortable around them. So again, it's going to be a problem. So pick people that you like first off. Who do you mesh with? Who do you like working with? They're a wonderful team that we've been able to work with for a long time that recently surpassed $1 billion in assets that we had on a previous webinar. Um, as he said it in that webinar, look, I'm blue collar. I work with blue collar people. Brilliant. That is absolutely what we're looking for here. Who do you love working with? Who do you feel like you connect with? And that's one key question. Now, the second key question is, who can you legitimately help? So this is another one of those questions that I often have to ask advisors that say, hey, I'm going to shoot for the high net worth or the ultra high net worth investor because it sounds cool to work with somebody that has 5, 6, 10, 20, 30 million in assets to manage. But can you help them? Right? The problems that they're facing, the obstacles that they have to overcome, are you qualified to help them overcome them? So, in other words, do you have an understanding of the ins and outs of all the different types of trusts and how to best use them and what situations to use them in? Could you look through trust documentation on an irrevocable charitable trust and be able to walk somebody through uh, some of the problems, or maybe there's some problems in the amendments and help them know what to talk to their estate attorney about? Could you help them pinpoint exactly ways in which they could lessen the tax bite both now and later because they have so many significant different income streams coming in, plus investments and other things? So, are you capable of helping them do it? So, and if not, you can't always make yourself capable of doing it. But until then, you have to help who you can help. So, get the expertise to help the people that you love working with, or have the expertise to help the people that you love working with. And then the third question um, is this market or is this ideal client a viable market? So in other words, just as an extreme example, uh, if you specialize in emu burritos or Arkansas, you're not likely to build up a massive book of business, um, especially one that's going to help you, run it for decades. Um, there's probably not that many emu breeders in Arkansas. But if it's, for example, women investors in the Dallas area, or maybe it's uh, all of the those that have a stock option plan at their employer, and are younger professionals in the Silicon Valley area, whatever it is, who are your target people, and are there enough of them? Uh, is there a possibility for word of mouth? And is there a way that you could easily target them to make this a viable market to target? So go through those three questions and really kind of take a look at, okay, well, who meets these criteria? And once you've gone through that, and that's first, then go take a look at your existing clients. And if you don't have any existing clients, you can skip this step, just stick to the first three questions. But if you have existing clients, go take a look at your existing clients and go through and see like how many of them fit that criteria, and your top tier clients, ones that you really want to work with. Do they fit that criteria of those categories that you listed? Do they are they the ones that you can replicate? And then what have you done to replicate them up to this point? And be writing all this out. You want to have all this documented so that it can be repeatable, and so that you don't do the number one mistake we all make in this industry, which is find a good idea and then immediately stop doing it. So set that out, looking at your ideal clients, set out exactly who they are and who meets this criteria, and then um, let's start developing your ideal client persona. And that's where, let me show you one of the sample ones that we've developed. The ideal client, there are three aspects to your ideal client persona that I need you to document. And again, it is write it out. It doesn't have to be in a fancy document like this, but write it out. And a great ideal client persona has basically, four key areas. I've written three here, but four key areas. The top area is basic details, name, ages, location where they live, and basic asset amount that they have. Um, we're looking for just some basic statistics. Then we move into summary. Now, the summary has to explain several different aspects. So, for example, it's got to go over their primary values. What's going to drive their decision making? Are they religious? Are they not? Are they business owners? Are they not? Do they have families, or are they more prone to not having families? And then what's their investment approach? Are they more aggressive? Are they looking for the unique investment opportunity, or are they investments are kind of an aside? They're totally good with a pie chart allocation that will stay the same, and they really need more help on the other end of the financial planning side. But what's their general investment approach? And then what are some of the biggest upsets that they tend to have that drive them to change? So, for example, did a lot of your clients come to you because they had tax problems that their previous advisor just did not see or help them solve, and so therefore it just created this major cost to them? Maybe it was that investment performance was poor, and that's the majority of your clients are coming to you because the investment performance from the previous advisor was just not in line with what you wanted. Or maybe their biggest upset was the fact that they weren't getting all of the services that they feel like they should get from a financial advisor. There's a wonderful stat out there that I share in my Asset Accelerator course that talks through the what exactly high net worth investors want from their financial advisor versus how many of them feel like they're getting it. And it's this crazy statistic. It's 80 something, 90% want that particular service, and 12, 13% feel like they're getting it. And yet 84% of high net worth investors have a financial plan. Yeah, it's kind of a weird balance there. So clearly there's a problem. But what was the biggest upset that drove them to change? And then obviously we want to avoid that upset. Now, next, what about overall health? Are they generally an active, fit bunch that likes to travel and is heavily involved in things? Or are they more of the, let's just stick to family and good food, good times, whatever it might be? Let's think about health, because obviously some of the solutions you may need to provide or systems you have in place or services you provide may need to accommodate the various forms of health. And then finally, what's their general community involvement? Are they highly involved? Do they tend to be more stay at home? Are they I've had several advisors that kind of really specialize in working with widows, and that's great. Um, those widows are wonderful, but percentage wise, statistically, not a lot of them are out there and heavily involved in the community. So, um, what is their general community involvement? And that's all you're going to put that into the summary area of your ideal client persona. The next thing is, what are their primary goals? What are they trying to accomplish typically? So taking a look again at your clients, your current clients that already meet that ideal client persona, what were some of the goals that they're trying to accomplish? They came to you to help them accomplish. Um, Write those out. Let's put them, as many of them as we possibly can, in that list. And then finally, what are some of the common obstacles that they were facing that, again, they needed your help with? So, for example, we often see in the high net worth space, some of the obstacles are that they've prior to this stage of their wealth growth and wealth accumulation, they've been stuck in a set list of investments, and now suddenly this other world of investing opportunities open up to them, and they're either taken advantage of because they don't know what's bad and what's good, and they hear the hint possible results and think, "Hey, let's go for it." They tend to get into some weird real estate deals, or lack of understanding about what is a deal and what's not. And then finally, they also sometimes don't even take advantage of some of the opportunities that they have to invest, and they stick to a very basic, mutual fund portfolio. Which, not that there's anything massively wrong with that, other than that there's a possibility of getting more elsewhere, or at the very least, getting a little bit better of a tax and cost advantage using other diverse investments. So that's a common obstacle amongst the high net worth. Others are, especially in that 3 to 6 million space, an obstacle is lack of a written, detailed budget. And by that, I mean not just addressing the overall, okay, well, we have so much for utilities and expenses and so much for, spending money like food and things like that. But it's getting more detailed, and then also planning out some of the big expenses that are going to occur over life. Do they have that written out? And most of them don't. They don't have that detailed list. I mean, for example, we all know that we're going to have to, buy a new car every 5 years or so, or maybe it's 10, depending upon how far, how much you drive it. We know that it's recommended you replace your roof every 15 years, but we usually wait until it leaks. So there's all kinds of things that you can set out there and put into the budget and be a help to them, but they often don't have that. And therefore, those things that just come up tend to really significantly damage their overall plan, and impact their therefore quality of life. So there are things that you can help them overcome. Now, list out those obstacles, as many of them as you can, or the ones that you likely feel. And now, again, on these client personas, you can have fun, just like you can see on this one. I put it as Jim Thorpe. Well, again, because that's just a hero of mine. You can do whatever you want with the names; it doesn't really matter. But just put in something that seems to be about where you would picture your ideal client. Now, you may create two or three of these to demonstrate, okay, these are the kinds of people we're looking for. Now, why did we go through this? You may say, now that creating this document sounds fun for certain members of my team, but then what do I get out of this? So the reality is that it comes to our second key here, and that is, what do you need to do to show these ideal clients, potential ideal clients, that you are the financial advisor for them? What do you say, and when do you say it? So there's several things to this. Now, the very first thing that I want to talk about is, let's take a look at the digital side. And to quote Rocky Balboa, let me tell you something that you already know. Um, 96% of your potential clients are going to look you up online before they come see you. 72% of your clients will visit your website before making any decisions. Um, 79% of Gen Z and millennials, which, I don't know why I always think that they're young, but they're actually getting up into ages that, might need to be investing. 79% of them say that they're going to find their financial advisor on social media platforms. 13% of them said that it's important that their advisor have an active social media presence. 83% of clients look for online reviews of their financial advisor before making a decision to work with them. So what am I saying with this? It's something you already know. We have to have a digital presence. We have to have the ability to, as Bill says, be found and look good. The problem is on the look good side. There's obviously more work that can be done on the be found side, and there's a whole lot of SEO work that we can coach you through. But the look good side is what I really wanted to make a point on. It is not uncommon, and by that I mean it happens most often, that I'll talk to an advisor team, and we'll be talking through their marketing plans and how they're going to achieve their goals. And we'll talk through, okay, who's your ideal client? Who are we trying to target? And they'll tell me something along the lines of, the business owner or something like that, something very generic. And we try to, obviously pinpoint a little bit more to that so that we can really fully define it. But then we'll go to their website, or I'll be on their website as we're having this discussion, and I will literally see nowhere on there what they do to specialize in helping business owners or whatever it was that we were talking about. So again, if I'm their ideal client and I happen to see a seminar invite, or a friend of mine refers me to them, 96% of the time, I'm going to go to their website to try to look to see if can this advisor help me. Um, if I don't see anything about being a business owner, which is a pretty significant part of my persona, am I going to go with them? Or am I going to chalk it up to, yeah, I'm sure they're good, but they're not for me? It's a big thing. The other aspect of it is that I need to show that not only do I target them, so I can't just write the word business owners on there, but I have to put in what I specialize in. How can I tee it up that you are the authority? Because the reality is, we know that people make decisions on change for three primary reasons. They're following the authority. So somebody of authority is telling them that they have to change. Number two, the peers are telling them that they must change and do something different, or they want to follow their peer group. And then number three, they have a pain and they need to have a gain. So in other words, something's bothering them, that's hurting them, that's causing them issues and angst, and they need to get rid of that and start experiencing something positive. So those are three main issues or catalysts for change in people. How am I showing that I am the authority, or that I am, sought after by their peers and therefore a great option? So taking a look at your digital presence What have you set up? And you may be asking now, what does this have to do with sales? The reality is the most of your close, in other words, the people saying, yes, I'd love to do business with you and sign on the dotted line, occurs before you actually start asking them questions about what they need to accomplish. In other words, it's as they're looking at your website, watching your videos, attending your seminar, listening to friends talk about you. All of that is the research necessary to build up in their mind that you are a trusted advisor and therefore somebody that can especially help them and their needs. And now all they need to do is sit down in front of you and make sure you don't screw it up. So I need my digital presence to completely cover how I can specialize in helping with them. So that's number one. Number two, always use a written questionnaire, right? And you may be saying, well, but Matt, I have all my questions and I know them. I haven't memorized. Or what do you mean by a questionnaire? Or, hey, I just kind of come up with questions as I go. Really cool. But what I've found over, the decades of being in this industry, working with some of the top advisors and then sitting across the desk from prospects myself to close the business, is there sometimes you say a question and it comes out and you're like, ooh, that was good. Right. And the client gets there, they see, oh, wow, that was a good question. And they start answering it. And it really kind of has an impactful moment. It's a good connection moment because you get the right information with the right worded question. And then you go to that next meeting and you're like, oh, what was the question I asked? And you attempt it, but you're a few words off. And it's just, oh man, I wasn't as good. Write it down, write those questions down, create your questionnaire. Or better yet, if you're the advisor that's been in this for 30, 40 years and you're getting ready to hand this on to the next advisor, wouldn't you love it if you were able to hand them a playbook and say, here, these are all the best questions you could possibly ask? Yeah, that would be amazing, right? You would know you'd be handing it over to somebody that could continue to close business in your absence. So the idea is have a written questionnaire. Now, some people ask, do I have that in the meeting? Yeah, have it in the meeting. Now, don't sit there reading it. I'm not going to be a robot reading a questionnaire and talking to the client, but I am going to have that at the ready because there will be times that they'll say something and you'll be like, oh, I know I've got to ask that question, but how did I word it again? And you'll be able to pull it up and read it. There's nothing wrong with that. Everyone is so used to going to professionals and having them read through questionnaires or having to fill out a questionnaire before they speak to them. So totally fine having a written questionnaire to make sure. And I say, hey, just to be thorough, it says here, I just want to make sure we dig into this, but like, here's this question. Can we talk about this one? Like, let's just dig into it. And obviously there's ways of introducing the fact that you have a questionnaire before the start, all stuff that we cover in our Asset Accelerator course, but always have a written questionnaire. Your questionnaire should have between 45, 50 questions. One of the things we give out at Asset Accelerator is I've put in some of my questions that I found that I loved. I've surveyed other advisors. I've taken some of the questions that they were cool sharing, which thankfully they're so very great in sharing all their good wisdom. And we've put together a questionnaire. But if come to class, create your own. Create your questionnaire. So third, I want you to ask yourself this question. When you sit down in front of them, I want you to ask yourself, how will they perceive this person that I'm meeting with? How will they perceive that I am an authority and therefore the uniquely qualified advisor to help them overcome their obstacles? So in other words, in the questions you're asking, are you just randomly going through your list or are you pinpointing and starting off where the most common obstacles occur? So in other words, if my most common obstacle people are facing is the pain of having to pay taxes today, start asking questions there. Often when I meet with clients, they're experiencing some major pain in having to pay taxes now. So if you don't mind, I just want to ask a few questions in that regard and then start asking your questions from your questionnaire. You're going to show, look, like you've experienced this. You've gone through this with plenty of other people just like them, peers, and you are the authority, right? So how will they perceive your authority? Other aspects to that is obviously 74% of investors want to see that their advisor has a designation. Do you have one? I mean, it used to be back in the day that we all said, no, I've been an advisor for 20 years. I'm all good. 74% want you to have some alphabet soup behind your name. Get it there. Obviously, the most recognizable is a CFP. You can do an AMS, which is super easy. AIF is actually pretty recognizable now too. If you're working with a high net worth, CWMS is a good one too. But that being said, show your authority. Next, how are you going to show them through your questions and through your discussion that this isn't your first rodeo? This isn't the first person that's been sitting in front of you that has $3 million. Even if it is, how are you showing them that they they're not one of a kind, that you are going to uniquely serve them, that you are going to hear them and their life and their uniqueness. But you've been here before, you've helped other people and with the same amount of money, and you are therefore have a set process to go through. So dropping little things like, as we go through these, we found that approaching this as in our 6-step analysis is the best option. Or, hey, we found with folks in your position that going through our custom audit is probably the best option to really dig into the things that you're facing. Just using little language like that to point out the fact that you are used to helping people like this is going to go such a long way. Now, next, I do want to pause here because I know I've been just kind of going because I get excited about this stuff. But if you do have any questions, please do drop them into the chat. Happy to answer any questions, and also in the Q&A, we'd be happy to address it. But same thing with the showing them that you can help overcome their pain, pointing out the stories of other clients that you helped in similar predicaments, and how then you were able to get them to a better spot. And it doesn't have to be long. It just, you need to slip it in, right? And tell the brief story. And all this stuff is stuff we practice and go over in detail in our Asset Accelerator course. But I wanted to make sure that you had it. This option that, again, just make sure you put these things into your question asking and really delving deep. So that being said, if we want them to see this stuff, we want to have all that occur, but how do we get in front of them? How do we get them to hear you in the first place? And well, actually, so there's a question in chat, but we're actually getting into it. So give me just a minute. We'll address that one, Zachary. But let's talk about the marketing channels, because there are 12 different marketing channels. You'll see on our screen that we don't have all of them listed out, but we've got a lot of them. And some of them we've doubled up. And the ones that are not listed, I'll address. So the very first one is called cloning, and it's really just getting introductions from your top tier clients. And we have set processes for doing that, but you just have to understand who is your ideal client. And then amongst your ideal clients, who are the ones that are most likely to be influencers, and therefore the ones that are more likely and willing to talk to their friends about coming to see you. So just make sure that, again, in introduction marketing, there's several campaigns. What we find is in these first 4, really 6, but first 4 in particular methods, this is kind of the best way to get into that high net worth and ultra high net worth market. So cloning is getting introductions from existing clients. Referrals, obviously you need to be consistently promoting referrals. But in the referral marketing and in the cloning, I want to point out who I specialize in. So in other words, as I'm promoting referrals, or as I'm talking to those clients and seeking referrals or introductions, hey, can you bring a friend to the event? I am pointing out some of the obstacles that I help people overcome. Now, obviously, I'm going back to my personas document and just stating a couple of the obstacles that I wrote on that document that my ideal client faces. Now, if you're stating, I help people really kind of overcome the big decisions that come with having to purchase, different real estate, and making sure that's a part of their overall investment status and portfolio. Cool. They're not going to refer to you their little $5,000 nephew, because that's literally not what he's looking to solve. But make sure that you're pointing out those things that you can help people overcome. With strategic partners, it's the exact same thing. Our definition of a strategic partner is a non-competitive professional who's an influencer amongst your ideal clients and is willing to help you in your business. Now, the way we find them and get them to help us in our business is by helping them in theirs. So seeking out those professionals that they do business in a way that they can be an influencer. So for example, one of our strategic partners was a luxury car dealer. Wasn't a transactional guy. He was a very consultative process. When people came to buy a car, in that consultative process, a lot of information came out. He would be able to recommend us as an advisor to work with that client if they had one of those needs. And in particular, again, setting up that partner for all the various things that they need to know in order to see the obstacles in the people they're meeting with that we are uniquely qualified to help them overcome. So we do have a set process for developing strategic partners. And I want to iterate that it is a very set process. It's one of those things that It's funny. I go over this with advisors all the time, and the ones that follow the exact process develop great strategic partners. The ones that skip steps or decide to cut out a little early, um, yeah, oddly enough, it doesn't work. So you do have to follow the exact process. Fourth, the connections and the social networking. There are all different methods of doing it. You've got to get into the right crowd. Again, taking a look at our ideal client, you wrote into the summary the things that are of value to them and their community involvement. Are they heavily involved in church? Are they involved in particular charitable organizations? Um, you need to get involved in there too. Be a part of it. And to be clear, do it because you want to do it, not because you're trying to get clients from it. Clients are the ancillary benefit, but get involved in those organizations, get involved in those networks. And then we do have set campaigns and strategies to get them in front of you. Um, Next, seminars, workshops. I hear this all the time, and I'm trying to zip through this as fast as I can. I hear this all the time that seminars don't get high net worth or ultra high net worth individuals. Helped a team in South Carolina with their seminar and developed the whole thing and customized it to be able to speak to exactly what the high net worth and ultra high net worth want. Um, we got 24 million in assets out of the first night. So you can definitely, and it's not because it was like dozens and thousands of people in the room. That was 4 appointments. So high net worth, ultra high net worth individuals do attend seminars. You just have to speak to them. So that being said, those are some of the key channels. I know there's a lot of channels here. I broke them down into the relationship marketing channels versus the mass marketing channels. Seminars and workshops and webinars are kind of both because I can invite clients to invite friends to those, and it does work out pretty well. So I know I zipped through a whole lot of things. Based upon the obstacles your ideal client is facing, I'm looking to see how can I get in front of them best. When you've developed that client persona, it's going to help outline exactly the things that you need to address. So one of the common things I see is, hey, I focus on business owners and the high net worth. And I've been running these maximizing Social Security seminars, and they're just not getting it. Okay, yeah, they're not getting it. That's not the number one problem or obstacle that business owners are trying to overcome. Is it a problem and obstacle? Sure. But it's not the number one that's on top of mind. That's good. When they see that invite, they're like, oh, dadgum, I got to be there. So speak to that, and that's how it's going to work. Now, all of this is stuff that we cover pretty heavily in my Asset Accelerator course. If you're looking for more information on that, we'll put a link up in chat. But we go over pretty thoroughly and then walk through like how do you talk to them, how do you work through things with that ideal market. And I keep these classes exceptionally small because I like to be able to work in a one-on-one basis and a pretty pointed basis with those that are in the class. So some classes we spend a lot of time talking about seminars. Other classes we spend most of our time talking about strategic partnerships. So we'll cater to what you need in the class and make sure that you're able to take that ideal client persona and get in front of them. So that being said, that's kind of all I wanted to make sure that we covered in our presentation. Hopefully that helped you gain a better understanding of some of the ways to target your ideal clients and how to speak to them to get their business. And with that, I think we'll open it up for questions. And sorry, Zachary, let me jump back to your question. I tried several of those marketing campaigns, but I've been able to get in front of my ideal client in my market. What could I be missing? Yeah, lots. So one of the common mistakes, and it's kind of like I just mentioned, that I see is the marketing isn't targeted to their ideal client. So in other words, I'm out there marketing and prospecting on certain ideas and thoughts, but it's not speaking to those obstacles that you should have written on your client persona. Or I'm not targeting that particular market in the right way. So for example, like I said, high net worth, ultra high net worth are going to be in that top relationship marketing methods. I can get them to come to workshops or small social events or things like that in the cloning aspects and some of our workshops, webinars. But most often, and according to the surveys, they go with based upon what other professionals, strategic partners tell them they should be working with, or family and friends. That's the most common method. Now, I am seeing the number pick up in those that search for their financial advisor just on a search engine, which is wild to me, but that's cool. It just means your SEO work is all that more important. And then the work that you have on your website does speak to your target market, which does bring up the other point. I did have a team that was running seminars and they weren't getting as much out of it as they want. So we switched their website around, ran very similar seminars, slight changes, and got a much better result. Because again, 96% were looking them up online and saying, why would I go to a seminar on this? Because they clearly don't specialize in this topic. So you do have to have all of this stuff married in order for it to work. That said, any other questions? Oh, so yeah, sample client personas. Um, I do give some out in the Asset Accelerator course, but honestly, you can go online and Google ideal client persona sample. You're gonna have to type in your own data anyway. So as far as formatting goes, there's plenty of free ones out there. Definitely recommend you do it. However, and then I would do this not alone. If you have a team, get your team to help you. Um, if not, just get somebody that can talk it through with you, a spouse, another friend, another advisor, just to kind of bounce thoughts through and talk through to make sure you have it. I did want to put this up. Obviously, you'll get the more detailed version if you stick around and get the goodie bag. Um, but when you get a prospect that's interested, you do need to make sure that they're moving through all of these lines. Um, if they're not immediately wanting an appointment, which are our hot prospects or A prospects, um, there is a set process for each of these to continue to build up that trusted advisor identity, to demonstrate that you are the expert that could help them in order to get them to then be willing to meet with you. Because most often the case is if they're not willing to start the meeting process immediately, it's because there's just not enough trust yet. So we need to build that up. And no matter what reason they tell you out loud, it's typically because they don't have enough trust. So, and then going through the sales cycle meeting, you should never really have to ever get to the mutual agreement or the deeper dive meeting. But you can, the education meeting is often where closes occur. Mutual agreement is really only if that's just a system you set up for yourself. Any other questions? Make sure I address those. While those are coming in, I'm going to point out that, again, I mentioned Asset Accelerator several times. Our next class is next week, but that one's full. So the next one that has some seats available still is in January. It's January 20th to 23rd. It's here in Salt Lake in our offices, which is awesome. And we cover a lot. We really dive deep. And then the thing that I absolutely love about it that I really wanted to make sure was in our class was the opportunity to practice what we preach. So it's one of those things that as an advisor, we constantly perform, and yet we never practice, right? It's one of the rare professions where that doesn't occur. You know, if you're a football player, you practice, I can't remember the number, but it's multiples of times more than you're actually playing as far as time periods go. And yet as a financial advisor, we're in an hour-long presentation all the time, but how often did you practice for that presentation? So we do practice, we do run through role plays, we talk through the specifics, we talk through question asking, we help you develop your own question list, plus give you the questionnaire of the top questions I see. So it's a pretty good class. Those that leave the class are able to do much better. My favorite success story of all time is we had an advisor that came to, or I went to, I also do on-site Asset Accelerator courses. There's multiple advisors and easier to get me out there than travel everybody out. That messaged me afterwards and said that he had his first prospect meeting applying the principles we talked, closed within 15 minutes in the first appointment, just following the principles. So it was one of my coolest moments because he's a young advisor, brand new, which brings me to this. Who is Asset Accelerator for? Honestly, anybody, but those advisors that have been building their business strictly based upon referrals, but at this stage, it's just not fast enough. You've achieved a level in your business that your assets leaving due to withdrawals and other things are higher than the assets coming in because it's just referrals. And so you have a need to pick up some other marketing channels. This is perfect for that. If you've been an advisor around for a very long time and you're just trying to say, hey, I just want to re-energize the business and get it growing before I sell in a few years, awesome. This is perfect for it. I've had several advisors come. I've had one advisor come twice who's been in the business for over 35 years. So, and then finally, if you're a new advisor in the business, you're just trying to figure it out, you're trying to put all this stuff together, you might be doing okay or might not, but either way, you just need somebody to give you the process, give you the system that works. And that is literally what this course does. So that's who should attend for this course. And I'm not seeing any other questions come in, but I'll give it a minute. And if not, while those are coming in, I will go ahead and pop up the goodie bag. And the QR code on the screen, you can type in that bgmtips.com, or I believe the link is also in the chat. So you can click that. Any of those methods, answer those questions, which obviously helps us help you. And then you'll be able to download that 16 steps of a master sales presentation and BGM's prospect conversion process. Well, I know I talked fast. Hopefully covered what you needed to hear. Yeah, thank you for attending, and I hope you have a great rest of your day and great week.